Every expert I've come across knows that they don't know that much.
I wanted to ensure I was better than other people. Being an angry kid gives you some weapons, right?
There's an inner conflict. I want to be healthy, but actually I'm going to prioritise business. So I'm really unhappy, this has to change now.
So George, if you can tell me why your approach is different to other people's when it comes to coaching people through weight loss. Because everyone seems to have a magic bullet solution, but we also know no one has a magic bullet solution, because if they had a magic bullet solution, everyone would be using it.
Yeah.
And it's something that I say in surgery, if there was one way of doing something, every surgeon would do it the same way. As in, if you know what the best way of anything is, then everyone does it that way.
Yeah.
The reason you've got 5 ways or 10 ways or 20 methods and 20 different diets and 20 different types of exercise and 20 different, fasting regimes, the reason you've got all of that is because people don't know what the right thing is.
Yeah.
And some of that is because we don't know what the right thing is, or actually it's different for each individual because they're different.
Yeah.
Right. And that's probably more the reality. But if you just give me a little breakdown on one, how you got into, how you evolved from personal training to get to this coaching status where you're now coaching people through sustained weight loss goals. Give me a little bit about your background and where that came from.
Fitness and health started for me when I started boxing. So I was 12 years old when I first walked into a boxing gym. The reason I did that was because I was quite an anxious kid. I was quite nervous. I wasn't very confident, and boxing gave me a gateway out of that. That also then drove an obsession with becoming an elite sports person, because Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, all these people, Ricky Hattons, who I started looking up to, surely they're not scared. So that's actually how I think my decisions were drove back then. I was moving away from worry and concern and, wanting to stand out and wanting people to notice me. That then evolved over time where my only interest became in sports, health, fitness. So that naturally geared me towards becoming a personal trainer. I went to college. I was fortunate enough to have 33 amateur fights in the end. I competed at a reasonable regional level, which then afforded me a sports scholarship at university. So I was funded as an athlete. And that kind of transcended over the years, and it kind of spiraled. So to cut a long story short,
What did you study at university?
Sports and exercise science, and then I did my master's degree in strength and conditioning, which is optimal performance for elite athletes, essentially.
Okay, so you've got lots of pedigree and experience in doing this for yourself.
Yes, precisely.
So then how do you evolve that into doing it for others?
Alongside doing it for myself, I was also always helping others. So my only ever job has been a coach. So I started off, it was a challenging one. It was a boxing coach at a police community project, and also personal training in a gym, so helping people with health and fitness goals. So
how old were you then?
I was 17.
So 17. So what most people would see as the awkward teenager stage of life. You're actually now in a community coaching and personal training and coaching people from probably deprived backgrounds.
Yes,
difficult psychosocial issues to deal with, behavioural issues probably sometimes.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was ages between 5 to 18 all in one class, and there was about 20 to 30 of them. That was one of my first. It's one of my first jobs, and it was an interesting one and challenging, but it taught me a lot. I also then was leading adults, so I was the expert in the boxing because I'd done it for many years. There was also other adult coaches there that I was kind of directing. That was one of my first ones, and obviously working in the gym alongside that, helping people with their health and fitness goals. So I was also always doing it for me, but then helping others at the same time.
Obviously, you must like interacting with people, because I just mentioned awkward teenager phase. Some people don't like talking to other people, right? And it's natural. Awkward teenager phase has got that name for a reason. And it's because all of us go through it. You're afraid of embarrassment.
Yeah.
I've got a daughter who actually says to me, she's learning to drive. And she says, I don't mind the driving. I don't mind the danger. I just can't stand the fact if I stall in a really busy area and everyone looks at me. The embarrassment will kill me.
That's funny.
And I thought to myself, so you're not worried about having an accident. You're not worried about driving or the challenge of driving, but you're worried about being embarrassed in front of people. And I've almost sort of said to her that, you need to face that a little bit head on and just sort of think, well, so what happens? So I want to know from you, from a mindset perspective, how do you go into that environment? Were you thinking about it? Were you self-conscious, or were you just thinking, I'm just going to go and do it and see what happens? Because it sounds like you were of the mode. There are people who, when you have a fear or an anxiety, you hide from it, you avoid it, right? And that's human nature to some extent. But some people's personalities, well, I've got a fear and something that bothers me, so I'm going to face it head on.
Yes.
So you expose yourself to it, and you make sure, and you almost threw yourself into it.
Yeah.
You know, you throw yourself in front of the danger to sort of show that you can and you can't. And I think that's individual personality, and that's what separates sometimes those elite sports people from, you know, what does separate the Hattons or the Tysons from the other people in their neighborhood? Because there were hundreds of other kids in their neighborhood. Yeah. That had the same upbringing as them. Why did they not end up in the same place? You know, why do you think, were you conscious of that? Were you conscious of the fact that you were doing that, or were you doing it on autopilot?
I think that came on autopilot because of exposure in boxing. So when I actually look back on anything, I've never really thought of it like this, but because I was fighting, because there was a lot of embarrassment, you know, you get beat up in the gym in front of loads of people. I was fortunate enough to go and spar a very, very talented lad during my college years, a few years before this. And I thought I was going there. I'd trained twice already that day. I thought I was going there. I thought he was going to be reasonably, you know, he was a weight class below me. I knew he was good, but I didn't think he was that good. I got absolutely pasted. And to top it off, I was on the bus to college the next day, black eye, and my pals in the group chat start saying, George, was you sparring, you know, so-and-so last night? And I was like, yeah. And I looked, I was like, how do they possibly know that? Posted all over social media, me just punching air and him beating me up. And I was just like, and I looked, I was like, happily, like, so a few months later, he went on to win for our age in the weight class below, a gold at the European tournament, which made me feel a little bit better, but it still didn't take the thing. So I think because when you slowly, like, and that didn't all happen at once, it was just, you know, slow adaptation over time. So then going in and just telling people
you face something, you overcome it, you face something, you overcome it, and in boxing you've got to overcome it. So it doesn't seem that, you know, telling people what to do, it's like, it's easier. People have controversial views, right? So there's some controversy around boxing. Yes. And I've actually had patients saying to me, I've had family members say to me, how can you watch boxing? Because it's brutal, or you know, they're injuring each other. And given your job, you should be anti that. And I actually think, well, one, people are going to do what they choose to do. You know, when people drive stupidly, when people fall off things, when people play rugby or head a football in football, and you know, whatever it might be, you know, playing cricket and you get struck in the head. We had that tragedy of a cricketer a few years ago, remember, who got hit in the head with a ball and died from it. Yeah, nobody goes out to injure themselves. No. You have a choice in what you do. The way I see it is I'm more interested in boxing, MMA, than I am in football and rugby, because they're team sports. To me, the epitome, the tip of the spear of sport is one person against another person. So everything you've done, right, in the 6 months, because it's not about the one night, obviously. It's a 6 months or 3 months or 12 months or the 5 years leading up to that night. But you're on your own. Right? Once you step up into that ring, no one's going to help you. There isn't anybody else. There's not a teammate. You can't have an off day. No. You can't have an off day and get away with it. So that, to me, is why the epitome of competitive sport is things like boxing. It's you against one other person. You both have the potential to potentially kill each other. If things go wrong. You're trained fighters and you're in that arena, and it's all, you know, it's no holds barred, sort of, to some extent. And that, to me, is a peak of sport. That is a peak of sport, and that's why I still enjoy watching boxing, because as we know, it's not just about the physicality in your boxing, it's in your mindset is absolutely key in that. There's so much going on, and it's people get fighting wrong, that they get quite emotional with fighting, but actually it's all about probability. So you've got all these physical attributes, all this training, all this the mental game of it, and you're constantly just trying to shift the probability in your favor. When two fighters get in the ring, there's always a possibility that you can catch a lucky punch and that's it. But you're constantly trying to shift it in your favor, and that's what I then coached amateur and professional boxing only for a short time, a couple of years after, and that's then I actually enjoyed that more as a coach than I did fighting myself. I was actually far better suited to that than I ever was getting in the ring and fighting myself. But why do you think that is?
Everybody has a nature of what they're naturally better at. I really had to force myself to fight. As I said, I was very anxious. It taught me a lot, but it wasn't my nature to fight. It wasn't who I really, if I look back, it's not who I really am. Whereas during the whole time I was boxing, university, I found that easy. I was like, oh yeah. And I could see other people struggling, but that to me was like, oh yeah, you just do this, and it made lots of sense to me. So it came very naturally. Mm-hmm. So and that's why I stopped boxing myself, because I looked at what it actually takes. If you want to be the absolute best, you can do nothing else but that. Whereas looking at what I was naturally good at, coaching, educating people, understanding concepts and teaching them, and do you know what I mean? That for me, it was like, oh yeah, that makes, I could sit there, that feels like play to me, whereas boxing felt horrendous hard work. But it taught me a lot, so I'm very grateful that I did that, because as I said, the lessons that I've got from that, nothing else. I always think to myself now, like, if I'm ever going to go do a talk, at least I'm not getting punched.
Absolutely.
Ansar's not going to hit me during the podcast. Hopefully not during the podcast. Now, how scared I feel.
I don't think I'm that quick.
No.
I do a lot of teaching as well, as you know, and what you always learn is when you're teaching, you learn why you do what you do.
Yeah.
And the basis of it, the root cause of what brings out excellence, what brings out, because a lot of people will do things because they're trained or they're taught to do it a certain way. They don't actually know why they're doing it.
No.
Yeah, they don't have that depth of understanding. Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Why is it done that way? And it's only when you start teaching it, you realize, because people are going to ask you that question.
You ask why all the time.
Yeah. People are going to go, why do you do that? Why do you want me to do this? Yeah. Why do you want us to do that? Why does that matter?
Yeah.
And you suddenly realize yourself, even though you may have been doing it for years, you don't know why. You don't actually know why you do it, and you don't know why you do it that way, for instance.
It's like when little kids ask you why all the time.
That's right, exactly. And when you're now teaching, you have to actually go back, reflect, and think, this is why we do it that way.
Yeah.
And this is why I do it this way. And this is, and you've got to be able to articulate that and explain that to someone, because you're the teacher now suddenly, you're the coach, right? So you've got to get that across to them. And that to me is where you start bridging that gap between an expert practitioner and a true expert who actually understands, has insight into themselves, insight into why the art or craft or whatever they're teaching is done that way. And that is, whether you believe in the word expertise or not, but I think that's where you start to cross over, because somebody's saying to me at one point, oh, you're Mr. PRP, you're the PRP expert. No, I don't think anybody knows more about PRP than you do. And I remember sitting there thinking, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Yes, yeah.
The more it is I don't know. What I don't know starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so actually you're sitting there thinking, am I really an expert? When all I know is there's way more questions now than the answers I had before.
Yeah.
When I knew a little bit, I thought I had quite strong answers. Now I've learned more. There's even bigger questions, and I don't know the answers to them yet.
Yes.
So, that crossover of when you suddenly go from you're good at something to becoming an expert in people's eyes, that I've always found that interesting. At what point does it happen? When do you cross the bridge to the other side of the river to join those experts over there?
You got that funny concept of the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less that you actually know, the more you think you know, because you think it's so small. And that's one of the things that I think I took most away from my master's degree, is that just realised every expert I've come across knows that they don't know that much and that there's still so much to know, and that they're governed more by processes of applying information and knowledge, but then also finding the answers. I think that's, and then I think it's a real interaction between those two things, as opposed to, obviously social media is different. You have to be a little bit more binary in your language. You have to kind of sometimes a little bit more debate. But whenever I listen to somebody, if they speak in absolutes, I already infer from that, you probably don't really know.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same warning. I have a red flag. Even when another medical expert stands up and says, "This is the way you have to do it," I think my brain's already told me that I don't know what they're talking about.
Same. Exactly.
If you were absolutely certain about that, and I'm not certain about it. And the more I've learned, the more uncertainties I realise are out there. And yes, it may mean that the weight of evidence suggests this is what 80% of the time you should do. But you have to be aware in the peripheries that you've got that 20% which is completely unknown.
Yes, and it could change everything.
And it could change everything, exactly, because it might be that 20% that dictates the success rate of 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 people in the future.
Yes.
You don't know, and I think. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's always a red flag to me when I see people standing on stage being absolutely certain about what they're doing. I think, you've already lost me, because I know you're not. You can't be a genuine person who's really analysed and has insight into yourself and your field. because there certainly isn't an absolute way of doing almost anything.
No.
Although, I mean, what's the converse of that is, as I said to you earlier, is I actually, I train surgeons. And when I'm training surgeons, I do actually say to them, what's the best way of doing something? And they'll say, well, it might be this procedure or that procedure. They'll come out with a guess occasionally. And I say to them, well, why have you just named 3 procedures? And why have you named procedures? Because actually only one of them is correct. So either one of them is correct. I said, there's only one best way of doing anything. I said, if you contextualize it and specify it down to anything. So if you're going to do an operation on somebody, for that individual patient with that individual problem, there's only one perfect way of doing it. The reason I do it differently to Mr. X and Mr. Y does it differently to me and Mr. X as well, is because none of us know the perfect way.
Yes, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, none of us know the perfect way. So we are winging it. We are winging it to some extent with our experience and skill. And what we say in surgery a lot of the time is, not what is the best operation for you, what is the best operation for you in my hands.
Yes.
You hear surgeons say that all the time, in my hands, this is the best procedure for you. And so that's contextualizing and a surgeon saying to you that actually somebody else might do it a different way and may still get just as good a result, could possibly get a better result, I don't know. But in my hands, to achieve the best result that I can achieve for you, this way I'm going to do it.
Yes.
That's my way of doing it. And it's something that, we grow up with, where we say, like, in my hands, and I remember one of our professors when I was at university and also subsequently as a junior surgical trainee, somebody saying to me, when you look at, for instance, a broken bone, you look at a broken patient and you say, this should have that operation. He said, but if the person operating on them is not comfortable doing that operation, is that going to deliver the best result for the patient? So putting in the right implant, but having that implant in the wrong person's hands. Yeah, so people may say, well, that's the best method of fixing something. But actually, if this person has done 1,000 of what you think is not the optimal way of fixing it, and has done 2 of that optimal way of fixing it, and he gets fantastic results with the thing that he's done 1,000 times, and he's going to get an arguably slightly dodgy result with the thing that's something he's done twice. If it was your leg, do you want him to do what he's done twice because that's the best implant? Or do you want to go with what he's done 1,000 times and got good results from 985 times? And when you start to paint things that way, you start to then realize where the nuance comes into decision-making and life, and there's an element always of pragmatism.
Yes. Rather
than just accepting, this is the best way. And you then have to start thinking, well, you've got to cut your colleagues some slack.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. You can't be dictatorial and say, this is the way it must be.
Yeah.
You have to do it this way, my way, or the highway. That approach doesn't work in medicine.
No.
It doesn't work in individuals. And I think it probably doesn't work in any area of life.
No.
In reality, perhaps outside of the military, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, so you tell me now a little bit about your method of coaching. You've told me before you've got the 3 cornerstones. So I'm a busy professional. Yeah, I'm a busy professional, actually. I'm a busy professional. I'm sort of your target audience, and you deal with business owners.
Yeah, business leaders or people like yourself. I mean, you run businesses.
So business owners, so business owners and people who are busy, who are too busy to look after themselves, or know how to look after themselves. They want somebody to help them get to where they want to get to quicker. That's primarily what it is. Because I think if you ask me, and so what do you think you need to do to lose weight? Because I do need to lose a bit of weight. I'll be like, well, eat better, exercise a bit more. We know the answers.
Yes,
So why have I not done it for 5 years?
Because people intellectually know the answers, so you understand the answer, but knowing requires getting it in your nervous system and being a repeated process that you go through each day. And I'd say that's like a deeper level of knowing. And I think, so the process I always apply, it's an evidence-based approach, which you'll be familiar with. It's, what does science tell us? What does my experience tell me? And what does the data, both objective, so the more objective we can get with your data, the better, but then subjective, so your beliefs, your experiences, and how you're speaking. And it's exactly as you said, it's the combination of all those 3 things that gets a better answer, closer to optimal, as opposed to, it's not the right answer, but it's better for you and for that individual. Now, the reason why a lot of people don't take action, they understand it's calories, they understand they need to eat healthier. It's these psychological driving forces behind why they're doing it. That for me, of what I've personally experienced, that gets missed. Now, there's lots of different models of psychological driving forces, but if I was to keep it really simple of what I see, you have your experience of life and you have what you value most in life. Most people choose to prioritize things that maybe aren't fully aligned with what they value in life, but they're doing it for unconscious reasons.
Okay.
Right? And what tends to happen is an inner conflict. I want to be healthy, but actually I'm going to prioritize business. And then over time, it's only until that inner conflict gets to a peak of pain. So, I'm really unhappy, this has to change now, that people take action. Now, you can get to that naturally, or you can be questioned and probed. And I can't tell you what to do, but I can ask you questions and I can get to understand your situation and what you value. And actually, these are the questions people can use for this. How is your health causing you pain, psychological, maybe physical as well, around what you value most in life?
Okay.
How would solving that and creating a result create you happiness around what you value in life? And that's the real key. I can't, and this is where I personally believe that a lot of coaches and trainers, they kind of push their ethos, their way of thinking, their way of life onto people and say, you need to do this, this, and this, but it doesn't work for people because that's not their experience. So I'm very much about finding what already influences you, finding out what your experience of life is, and understanding how we can get leverage on that and how we can drive change from your perspective. And not like, as you said, the solutions are quite straight. A lot of people don't get it right because they don't spend, they haven't spent 10 plus years understanding nutrition, physical health, or all of that.
Yeah.
So they'll often do things that is probably costing them far more energy than they need, which is, again, another reason they stop. But the blueprint gets simple once we're clear on why we're kind of driving the car and whilst we're on that journey in the first place. And it's not just once, it's got to be refined. So
you've got to form habits.
Yeah.
You got to create habits. And I've got a business coach, and the way he always says it is that you got to find the people's pain.
Yes.
You got to find their pain points.
Yeah.
And then you got to find where they want to be.
Yes.
And you got to build a bridge, right?
Yes.
You got to build a bridge between them. But he's always like, but you got to get that. You got that pain has to be painful enough. He says you have to find the pains, and then he said, "I want you to stick your finger in the wound and keep wiggling it. You've got to wiggle it enough that it makes them shift."
And it's even more important if they
want
can
to travel the journey.
If they can do it for themselves, because then it comes down to ethics, doesn't it? Of like, is it ethical for me to push somebody? It's very, very ethical for me to give you the questions, the resources, the guidance, the coaching to say, here's the information. Let's ask these questions. And obviously you've got permission from these people, and these people want to do this. And then it's actually guiding them through it, because so they make the decisions. They start to apply the things that you're giving them. So it's best for them. They get the best result. They get what they want.
We call this in all parts of life, whether it's business, relationships, weight loss, exercise, it's mindset.
Yes.
Right. So you're changing somebody's mindset is sort of the buzzword. And so assuming you found people's pain and they've already contacted you saying they're in pain, and that pain's, I'm struggling to lose weight, my joints are hurting, or whatever it might be. And so can you help me achieve my goals? You go through that mindset approach and you try and find and you nudge them along. But you mentioned something to me earlier about working out at a conscious level how people operate, or get them to think about it or be conscious of how they are. So how does that fit? Yeah, how's that different to the standard mindset approach, I would say, which is me sort of saying, well, what's stopping you? Where do you want to get to? What do you think's stopping you getting there? And let's work on that.
Yeah.
Which is what I see everybody doing, right?
Yes.
And I said that's what I try to do myself, but it lasts for a week, and then I get really busy, and then it's gone again.
Yeah.
It's gone again, and so I do 1 week where I'm being really good, and then it oscillates. You good week, bad week, good week, bad week, and how do you stop that? And I'd like to hear your sort of way of you say trying to get people to sustained method of doing it. So how do you achieve that sustained approach?
It definitely starts with the awareness, and there's different models that you can use. One of the most helpful models I've come across is the 6 psychological human needs, and understanding how they drive behavior and what things people use to fulfill them. And
so need one?
So need one is certainty. You want to move away from, and this is both physical and psychological pain, and move towards happiness and, pleasure. And
so need two?
Uncertainty. So people want variety. You do the same thing, you get bored.
Yeah. I need three? Connection.
So one of the biggest driving forces is being connected to other people.
Okay. So if you do it in a group, for instance, you might do better, or with a family member, or with your wife, or brother or sister or friend. Okay. 4?
So the final two. So these are so the first 4 are the ones that those needs have to be met. So the fourth is significance. Okay. So having to stand out, having to feel important, wanting people to notice you.
Okay.
The final 2 needs, so those get met in any other way. And again, this isn't the truth, and I'm glad I can speak like this because lots of people don't understand what I mean when I said this is just an approximation of the truth, which I've personally found when applied is a really good guide, and people really resonate, and it helps them gain that conscious awareness. The final 2 is growth. People need to feel like they're growing. And then their last one is that they're contributing. So people feel very, very fulfilled if they're contributing to a mission, to other people, and really helping people drive. Now, with health and wellness, the thing that I've found is people will find a way to meet those needs. And if you're meeting 2 or more of those needs through a particular vehicle, so using a method like a business, let's go through. So certainty, you're going to make money, you're going to feel good. Uncertainty, business is dynamic, it's got lots of variety in it. You get connection, maybe because you feel like you are that business person, you connect with other business owners, people who are similar. The significance part on the business owner, on the person. Growth, you're going to grow constantly in business, and also the contribution part. So if you're really aligned, you're helping people change their lives. The part where people come up against barriers and blockages is when they have those inner conflicts. So they've got a vehicle like that, but that then comes at the expense of their health. So they don't take the time. So when we said around looking at actually what you causing pain around, it's not just pain around, I feel overweight and I'm not happy. It's actually, well, my experience of life really, if I take that away, is family. It's being connected with my family, and enjoying that time. However, they're so unconsciously driven to meet those needs through a vehicle that they've found that they neglect their health, and that comes at the cost and in a conflict with their inner conflict with their family. Now, one of the processes that I go through is helping them understand actually, well, if we strip that all back, what's life for you? Like what is it you really value, and what do you want life to look like? And it's only then when you gain awareness around these needs, because you start thinking, oh, well, actually, if we place those needs over time in a healthy way, I can get certainty through feeling good every day, through improving my health. I can get variety through maybe doing a sport, maybe doing, joining a club, joining a team. I can get significance. For me, it was, helping other people with their health. I love people asking me questions about health. I can get connection, especially connection with both my family, because my health is in a better place. So I'm able to, the vehicle of my body, I'm closer to optimal. So I can be more present and it's easier for me. And then growth comes through becoming healthier, and then the contribution side gets taken care of with helping others. Now, when I said it's different, it's really doing a deep dive and actually understanding, where are you with life, and how are you fulfilling those needs, and how do you actually want them to be fulfilled in a better way?
How long does this take? Because this sounds like quite an arduous process.
Yeah, so it's...
Is it very individual? Do some people sort of get it really quickly and one or two sessions they're in? Yeah,
some people do. I do it in multiple ways. So you'll know this with teaching. I have multiple ways of teaching. I have an education course, which goes through this. I have one-to-one calls. I have group coaching calls. I deliver specific webinar days where we unpack this process. The initial call's 45 minutes. So when people are on board with me to get into this process, and we don't dive into this straight away. So this is me then labeling things and helping them understand it at a deeper level. The initial call is very simple, of me understanding their experience of life and just seeing how they're fulfilling it, and just asking very simple questions of where they want life to be and getting under the hood of that.
When you say experience of life, so give me an example, because I'm just thinking now, what question would you ask me that would say to me, what's your experience of life? And because to me, that's quite a vague question.
Yeah.
And it's enormous. What's your experience of life? I was saying, oh, well, I grew up in, is that how you start off? Is that, do you want my life story?
Yeah. So very, very broad. The simple term of it is obviously it's health dependent. So it goes back to what I said before. So what is in your life now? What is your health or the weight that you've got causing you pain around? Okay. And then for people's experience, I've personally found it comes down to usually a couple of things. It's usually energy, so daily energy, so how they feel day to day, so their ability to excel in work and then be present when they come home with their family and give energy also to the family. It's confidence, so how they feel when they're talking on stage, how they feel when they're just thinking about. I
can almost hear my wife saying, "Yeah, he's got that one. He's got that one." Because I get bushed. I mean, a busy day at work, and I come home, and then I get told that you're grumpy or you're just tired, and I am. I mean, occasionally I will come home after a long operating list.
Yes, which is
and it's psychologically and physically taxing. And I get home, and I found certainly as I got older and the grey hairs appeared more. I sort of just want to rest in the evening.
Yes.
And, and then I'll even flake out. I'm usually quite a late sleeper, 11, 12 is normal bedtime.
Yes.
On operating day, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, I'm gone.
Which makes sense, which completely makes sense.
And I just find I'm physically worn and psychologically worn. I don't have the capacity to. And everyone's different, right? I mean, my wife wants to come home and talk about her work.
Yeah.
I don't find that,
That's interesting.
Maybe I'm a man, but it's a typical man thing. I don't know if there is a difference in men and women, but when it comes to this, but certainly for me, I actually want to process myself. I internally process things. And I need to run through them in my own head, not speak to them to someone else about it.
Yeah.
So I self-analyze, I post-mortem most of my own day in my own head. And then once I'm happy with that, then I want to shut off.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I probably need half an hour of my own time.
Yeah.
Whereas I notice, say my wife, she wants to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
So she wants to talk to me for an hour. And I'm thinking, at the same time, I want an hour where I don't want to talk about work.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have long conversations with anybody.
Yeah.
But her needs are very different to mine.
Yes.
And that equation creates a bit of friction.
Yes.
That creates a bit of friction. And so, it's something that, I'm slowly mastering after 28 years in marriage. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
but it's interesting. I just find how everyone's so different.
Yeah.
But I suppose I have insight into why I'm different to other people and how they're different to me, and that's part of the key here. I work on physical level more than a mindset level per se. I actually do things to people to change them, whether it's surgery or whether it's stem cells. But I'm an interventionalist. I'm a clinician that does things to people.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my inherent mistrust of people. I absolutely believe in your view of it that you've got to get people to engage.
Yes.
You've got to then get them to change.
Yeah,
and that then gives you sustained change when they understand what their problems are and how to get around them. And if you can then get them to the next step, is you get them over that bridge and form habits.
Yes.
Those I completely get all that. That is the right way of doing it. And then sometimes people say to me, well, why are you not doing that as part of your treatments programs? And I say, well, I am, because that's why I've got George. But I don't do it. I mean, I spend a bit of time talking to people about what's important and why mindset and habit forming is so important if they want to keep going. But at the same time, I have a slight, my personality is such that I prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yes.
I don't know what that makes me, actually. Does that make me an optimistic pessimist? Or am I pessimistic optimist?
Probably just
pessimistic optimist. But it's a bit of both, because I actually genuinely think, I hope for the best. I always say, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. But I also, at the same time, think, but there's going to be a failure point somewhere.
Yeah.
And I just need to be ready to be prepared for that. And with me, with patients, one of the things I know I do that's fairly unique, so I went to a conference once and somebody said, before you inject somebody with such and such product, what do you do? And everyone gives antibiotics. That's a product license. You should give antibiotics beforehand. And so what 99% of practitioners do is they give people the tablets. This is what the company tells you to do because it's more convenient for them. I give them to you, and when you come tomorrow for your injection, you take the tablets 2 hours before you turn up.
Right.
That's the protocol.
Yeah.
And then you have to rely on the patient to say they've taken them.
Yes. Right.
Okay. And I don't know if the patient took them half an hour beforehand.
Yeah.
Or 3 hours before, or 7 hours before, or in fact they forgot and they've turned up in clinic and then I've gone, oh bloody hell, I forgot to take those. I better tell the doctor I've taken them.
Yeah.
That's how I think.
Yeah.
So I sit there thinking, well, I don't actually know you took them.
Yeah.
I don't know when you took them because you didn't take them in front of me.
Yeah.
And hence, even though you're telling me you took them, I don't quite believe you. So what I think of is, the way I work psychologically and even the way I train, you find the point of weakness in a system.
Yes.
So where's it going to fail? Where's it going to
yeah.
fail? And you plug that failure. That's how I operate.
Yeah.
You plug the failure. So I don't trust the patient. So that's why when I learned at that conference, my psychology was different to my colleagues because 99% of them was the company told me to do this. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And I trust the patient to do the right thing. And I was sat there thinking, why am I the only one in the room here that brings the patient in 20 minutes beforehand, puts a needle in their arm and injects the antibiotic into them myself?
That's interesting.
And I'm the only surgeon in this whole room of over 150 surgeons who are saying, I bring the patient in, I put them in the chair myself and I chat to them and I ask them how they are and check their allergies, and then I put a needle in their arm and then I have the antibiotics mixed up and they get a shot of antibiotic, which I know 100% dose is in.
Yeah.
And it was done at the right time. I did it. I know exactly when it went in.
Yeah.
And then I do 30 minutes later, they get the treatment.
Yeah.
When I know now I've got optimal safety. And that's the way I build things. So the point of failure in this whole process to me is, because I can control the bits I control, I can't control the other bits.
Yeah.
And so I thought, do I leave that lack of control or do I plug it?
That's interesting.
And I plugged it.
Yeah.
And that's extra work for me.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing a process that private hospitals charge an extra £100 for instance. I don't charge any extra because I think, well, I'm doing it for me. I'm not doing it necessarily for the patient.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for what I think is a patient's benefit.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we've had no infections or any problems with this product. I think because we're quite diligent with it. But that's me. I sometimes I've explained that to patients. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm having to put a needle in your arm.
Yeah.
And I'm having to give you your antibiotic myself. But this is why I do it.
Yeah.
And interestingly, some of the patients listen to me and think, well, I could have just taken the tablets.
Yeah.
But actually, probably 80-90% of them go, actually, I prefer the way you do it because you're certain.
Yeah.
You're certain, right? And because the other element of uncertainty in this is when you take tablets, your gut's different to mine.
Yes.
So you may absorb 50% of the antibiotic into your circulation. I might absorb 70, but somebody else might absorb 30.
Yeah.
We don't know, right? And again, that to me is a point of failure.
Yes.
If I don't know whether you're going to be a 30 or a 60 or an 80, why am I guessing?
Yeah.
So put it in your vein, 100%.
Yeah.
Right? Or 90% or 98%. We IV, say penicillin, gives you 97 to 98% bioavailability in your blood. We know that. It's reliable. It's well studied. So why would I accept 30, 60 or 80 when I know I can get 97?
Yeah, it makes so much sense.
So when I analyze a system myself, that's how my brain works.
Yeah. And that's...
and I think, well, these are the points of failure. How do I minimize those? And then I just do, and I build that into my system. So if it means a bit of extra hard work for me, which a lot of surgeons don't want to do, because most surgeons, you have to remember, most surgeons have forgotten how to stick a line in a patient 10 years. It's been 10 years before they did that, since they've done that. That's an anaesthetist's job or a nurse's job or a junior doctor's job. They haven't put a line in a patient for 10 years. And I'm doing that every day. It tells you a bit about your psychology, and I do have an insight to myself, like maybe I think different to other people.
Actually, it's so interesting how you put that, because that is coaching as well to a degree of problem solving. So one of the big things that I learned, I'll never forget the lecture. There was a guy who said, is coaching science, is it a science or is it an art? And I think he brought up a quote from Leonardo da Vinci. He said that we call things art if we can't measure it and we don't know how to measure it, which is a very, very interesting way of putting it. And one of the things he said...
coming from a master scientist artist.
And one of the things he said was, well, coaching is definitely a science, because when we measure enough, we can map the decision matrix. And one of the things, upon learning that, that's kind of how I've applied it and why I've arrived at this mindset and actually the fundamental, because I kind of did that exact process. If you're looking at a problem, it's like, well, I can give, and I found myself doing this. I was working with elite athletes and I was working with general health and wellness people. Why is the elite athlete doing everything that I say, getting like above phenomenal result? Why is this person not? And it was literally that process of elimination. Well, I know the nutrition, physical health, it's got to be thinking and feeling. And then it was like, well, why do some people make it last and others don't? It's, again, if we regress it right the way down, it's how they think and how they feel each day. Yeah. And when I said about the 6 human needs, like, I don't see that as the answer. What I do in my course, in my coaching, I'm constantly now researching, I'm constantly understanding, I'm meeting new people, so everybody's got a different way of doing things. And I'm applying these tools to help guide them through that thinking and feeling level. And as you said, it's about, but thinking and feeling is very, so the example you gave is phenomenal. You can control that. Thinking and feeling, it's very difficult. Some people, I'll hold my hands up, it gets to a level point where I've actually referred them on to psychologists, because actually we've identified that their relationship with health and fitness is very, very deeply rooted in a potential psychological trauma. So that's out of my area of expertise. That is out of what I do. Yeah. So we have to...
It's either a deeply held belief or a response to trauma, as you say, that they can't overcome.
Exactly. So then we need to refer them to the right people. So I'm very clear with my professional boundaries, and that's what I do. I go back to my evidence-based process. So you mentioned about it being a long, arbitrary like kind of process. It's not to an extent, because I really use that process of application. I give them the tools, and everybody's different. So after the coaching, you kind of get a feel for that person. And that's what I'm now doing. I'll be forever evolving with that coaching process, because everybody's so different. But what I've found, and that's one of the reasons I just work with business leaders and people in that, because then the psychology tends to be very similar, and you start to see the patterns. People, you remind me of this person. This is what they use. Like, let's apply that. And that's where it compounds then, because it becomes easier and easier. And that's what I love about coaching, because you're constantly doing that and you're seeing the results improve, and people are putting that trust because of the results.
Do you find there's the odd person who you sort of speak to and you think heart sink?
In terms of just I'm
not sure I can get this person.
I tell them, absolutely. Absolutely.
Too big a project.
Yeah. Listen, 100%. Like this, and I'm still trying to work out that answer, because and I'm sure you've had this as well, but like sometimes it's not even people, it's always who come to you for help, but it's people just outside of the circles, for whether it's family who are asking for advice, and you give them advice and you think, why aren't you listening? And that was something that I've started to slowly learn. So it goes back to that leverage point, and you need psychological leverage through somebody paying you, understanding, like, for example, it's very difficult for a child to give their parents advice, even though we're experts, because they still see the role of parent. Do you know what I mean? So then it depends who you're talking to and the tools that you use. Like what I now do, again, and this has come from learning and understanding, is I try to the needs analysis. I do the needs analysis on the person. Is this person somebody who I typically help? Do they need to be referred? Or actually, if it's a family member, is there somebody who I know they'd listen to for whatever reason, because of their psychological profile and how they think? It's a
experiential wisdom comes in time, doesn't it? It's one of those things. And what I remember vividly, personal story time, is me and my dad, typical sort of, I was a grown-up teenager, 17, 18. I knew what I wanted. Yeah. And my view was my dad's from the older generation, doesn't understand us, doesn't understand my friends, doesn't understand where we are and what we need to be doing. And my teenagers now think the same thing about me. Yeah. And so you just see it cycling forever, right? Yeah. That teenage relationship will probably always be that way. But I remember it vividly, because, if my dad asked me to do something or I disagreed with him, you'd always end up at, odds and, I would be slamming a door, typical teenager behavior, slamming a door, and my dad would be shouting or saying, you don't understand anything, you don't know anything, and listen to someone who knows what they're talking about. And while I rebutted and was combative, that was the relationship. I remember in my 20s, I learned a little bit. I got a bit of wisdom this after university, and I remember sitting at home having the same conversation. My father saying something to me about what I shouldn't have been doing. If this is the best way of doing something and you're not doing it.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I thought to myself, and this is where I sort of sat there to myself, and I got mature enough where I wasn't very mature. I was still slightly angsty about that conversation. I was like,
still reactive.
I was, my jaw was clenching quietly. But you know what I did? I just stayed quiet.
Yeah.
I just stayed quiet. I thought, I'm not going to respond. I'm just going to let him say what he wants to say.
Yeah.
Because actually in my head, I had this view. I thought, he's been around for 60 odd years. He's grafted, sacrificed, worked 6 days a week for the last 40 years to put food on the table, to raise the rest of us. Should he not, and does he not have the right to say what he wants to me?
Yeah.
Right? He's earned that right. And actually, once I had that mindset, that was a level of respect suddenly. I thought to myself, I don't have to agree with him.
Yeah.
I can sit here and quietly grind my teeth.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to stay quiet. So he had his conversation with me, usually the usual one-sided conversation. And I could have reacted the way I normally did. And then it would have become combative. I just stayed quiet and I just listened to him. And then he finished. And then he sat there for a moment and he thought, I didn't respond. So he wasn't used to that either. He was expecting a response. And so I didn't respond. And what I remember is, a minute or so later of silence in the room.
Yeah.
He then went, I shouldn't have said that to you.
Really?
I'm sorry.
Really?
The first time in my life when my father actually turned around and apologized to me. And that was a wake-up call for me. I thought, wow, what a different response.
Yeah.
And it wasn't his response, it was my response.
Yeah.
Right? So and that's where I started to realize you can control the room, you can control the response, because what you can't control is what other people do.
Yeah, you can influence.
You can influence, but if you control what you do, that changes the influence and the direction of conversations and thinking.
Yeah.
And but actually what fundamentally, when I analysed it backwards and I post-mortem that conversation a little bit, I sort of thought, what was it that changed it? And for me, it was the fact that I respected him.
Yeah.
I accepted he had the right to his opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
And that could be contrary to my opinion.
Yeah.
He's allowed to have it. And in fact, he has more right to it than I do.
Yes. Yeah.
He's earned that right more than I've earned that right. And by actually accepting that and staying quiet, even though I didn't agree with it, it changed the paradigm of our relationship completely. And that was really interesting to me, because actually we've been more respectful to each other for the last 20 odd years because of it.
Really? That's so interesting.
Right? So, we could have been combating each other for another 25 years. But the last 25 years, our relationship with each other has been far more respectful. And literally because of that one conversation.
That's crazy. And
it's crazy.
Right? And that came from a different way of thinking.
Yeah, and it was a different way of me reacting.
Yeah.
And then hence influencing, as you say, you change. And, and that behavioural change, that taught me an awful lot. And it made me then introspect a little bit, look into myself and think, what is it that creates your behaviours? What is it that creates your behaviours? And I've gone back right to when I was a child, because I suffered some trauma as a child. And the trauma wasn't serious trauma in the sense, I wasn't abused and I didn't have, but I had a feeling of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I grew up in an area where there were a lot of racists. We grew up with racism, and I remember my family being sworn at or attacked or spat or even stoned coming back and forwards from the shops. And what I remember is that, from say the age of 5, feeling unsafe when I left home. And that creates an environment psychologically, both, and we know now physiologically.
Yes, yeah.
Physiologically, your cortisol levels are a little bit higher. You're more alert. You have a feeling of uncertainty and danger. That actually creates as you get older, more aggression. That element of uncertainty in children, which they don't know how to manifest, often creates children who are more violent. They've got chips on their shoulder, they've got a problem with the world, and we had all that, right? So I grew up as a teenager where I was an angry teenager. And what really caught me as a reflection of my own life was that when I went to university, it was the first time I'd left my city, my home city, and I went to university and I met friends who were from all over the world suddenly. They were from all over the world. And many of them grown up in countries where there was no racism. Right? There was no racism. So they were black, but they lived in Kenya and Nigeria, where everyone's black. Everyone's black. Or India, everyone's brown. right? Yeah, everyone's brown. And so they didn't have any chips on their shoulder. They didn't have that anger element that I realized I had, because again at university we had the odd element where somebody would say a derogatory term to you, when you're walking through town. And what I realized was how different our behaviors were. Because mine would be reactionary, angry immediately. I'll be, what did you say?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Oh, and aggression. It was I responded in kind. Someone who's aggressive to me, responded in kind. And these guys who never grew up with that chip on their shoulder and with that higher level of anxiety around that, weren't triggered by it at all. They were a bit like, what, he called me what? What a stupid term. They almost like analysed it.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, they had no trigger. It wasn't triggering. It wasn't triggering to them at all.
Yeah.
And I was sat there saying, he called you this. How come you're not angry? And I was like, that's really stupid. Why would you say that?
Why would I let that bother me?
Why would I mean, who cares?
Interesting.
And I thought, wow, okay. Maybe I need to learn something from these guys, because why is it triggering me and it's not triggering them at all? It doesn't bother them, and then you realise actually all that background, all that history, what you grew up with, is what shapes your behaviours and your reactions to people. Yeah, because we're two brown people walking down the street, and our reactions are completely different to the trigger that somebody gives, just because of our environments were different when we grew up.
And it's also that deciding what that consciously means as well, or subconsciously means.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like for you, it sounds like it also gave you the gift. So that, like, it was anger for a period of time, but maybe that's why you think differently in a room full of 150 surgeons, that you like to control things more. Like it.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Is that also
absolutely.
your gift?
I mean, I had an interview with a friend of mine who's been in personal development for many years, and one of the things we thought about was being an angry kid gives you some weapons, right? So one of the things I was like, I wanted to never be helpless, and I wanted to ensure I was better than other people, so that nobody could look down on me again. And I think one of my driving forces as a teenager was like, I need to be better than other people, because I don't want to be in that position where people are looking down on you. And that's almost how you feel like. I mean, that's what racism creates, uncertainty, but not just racism, anything, right? So where if somebody's being horrible to you in any way, undermines you, and it can be in your own family, parent or sibling or whatever it may be, toxic relationships undermine you. That undermining effect creates that sort of feeling of disempowerment.
Yes.
And then as a result, you can either accept that and go down one stream, or combat it, which is my choice. And so I was sort of asking you about, you face your fears, and what's interesting is you seem to have that commonality of personality. So some people face their fears. So what I was afraid of, I was like, no, I'm taking it head on. Yeah.
Because that gives you certainty. In a room of uncertainty, that gives you certainty.
I'm going to make sure I'm better than all you other people. And that's what's forever. I mean, sometimes I even have to analyse, why am I doing it? Why am I going the extra mile? Yeah. Because it's sometimes conditioning. It's not even... Yes. It's just the way I've now become built, and my behaviours are built, probably, as you say, from that deep trigger. But I now overcompensate. Yes. I overcompensate, and I work harder than other people to make sure I'm, whatever I decide to do, I try and make sure I'm dominant at it. Yeah, that's interesting. I make sure I'm dominant at it. I don't want to be the person that's like, I'm never somebody who accepts middle of the road. Easy life, middle of the road. Yeah, I want to be the best at it, because I have to be able to defend that. I have to be better than everyone else at it, and that's what drives me, and that makes you a difficult person to live with sometimes. And I suppose that's when Mrs. Mahmood will tell you that.
I think that's when you get to decide, isn't it, whether you want to let something drag you, because then, and you'll know the research around neuroplasticity. You're not set with behaviours, you're not set with beliefs, you're not set with a certain way of doing things, and it's that initial awareness of, well, actually, when I start to understand, that's why I use some of these tools, because people then start to say, oh, that's why I do what I do. And then it's about making that conscious decision. Do I want to continue thinking like that, feeling like that? And if it's a no, it's then the question comes, well, how do I change? Well, you have to condition a new way of thinking, a new belief, create evidence. And it's that, it goes back to conscious awareness of you want to decide. And for you, as I said, it sounds like it's been both a gift in some areas of why you excel so far, but then also potentially held you back in others, where maybe that's something, as time goes on, you think, actually, I don't want that to hold me back in this area. I just want to use it to excel. And that's that you want to use your brain instead of let your brain use you. Yeah, and that's a big decision.
And I'm still conscious of the fact. And, I suppose my only saving grace is that I recognise my limitations to some extent.
Yeah.
And I understand that I've got these demons.
So you manage them.
Yeah, exactly. So I sort of manage them and I'm willing to address them.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to go to coaching.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go to workshops.
That's the big difference.
Yeah, I'm willing to go to a workshop and I'm willing for someone to say, you're bad at this.
Yes.
And this is how to get better at it.
Yeah.
I'm willing to face that and go somewhere and say, well, this is how I do things. Is it right or wrong? And I'm willing to be scrutinised. And I'm willing to accept criticism and somebody say, I'm usually right, but...
Me too.
I'm usually right, but I'm willing to have at least the argument with somebody.
That's even understanding yourself to the point where you have to be criticised and you have to allow someone to correct you so you can still be the best. So that's even still using that to a degree. And it's like understanding your own psychology. And like, as I said, it's constantly, as long as you're the one who's making the choices and you've got the awareness. I mean, for people who are sat here who are stuck, they probably don't have the awareness of what's driving it. And that's that initial, for me, that's that core that I was chatting about. That's the initial stage. What do you value? How's health causing problems around that? Let's get awareness of that. Or whether it's a career change.
It's what we call, in simple terms, it's sort of, whether it's healthcare or technical or engineering, you call it what you call a gap analysis, right?
Yeah.
It's a gap analysis where you need to be here and what's stopping you getting there.
Yes.
Where's the gap?
Yeah.
And looking at your gaps internally is difficult.
Definitely.
Yeah, especially when some of the roots may go back decades or even to your, toddler stage, baby stages. And something I learned from a birthing expert, interestingly, was that some of your conditioning in life comes pre-birth.
Really? From
and I thought, why is it? I remember asking this question, what evidence is there for that? I mean, how do you know? How do you know how a baby feels, for instance, in the womb? Like, we don't have any data on that. How do we have data on that? But they've actually mapped out, apparently, there is data, and the World Health Organization has some of this data. I've got the research papers, which I can share with people if they want. But she sent me the data on this. And I thought, really? And she said, I go and lecture to the World Health Organization and explain this, that if a mother grows up in an unsafe house, for instance, or unsafe environment, the hormones she generates affect the baby. When the baby is then born, you've then got a sort of disturbed child with abnormal hormonal levels. And the way the mother speaks or is spoken to and all those things, all those emotions are read by the fetus. And I was like, that's the thing, God. So it's not even a case of like, when you're 1 or 2, something happens, or 5, something happens. It's like before you're even born, something, what's going on is conditioning your future. And I said, so you're telling me this actually fundamentally changes the outcome for that child? Is there any evidence for that? Is there any evidence that, again, her argument was there's pretty clear evidence that mothers that give birth to children from uncertain, unsafe environments or from trauma backgrounds, those children struggle more throughout life. So that outcome can impact you the rest of your life unless you recognise it and do something about it.
Well, that's I'd love to ask you a question about that, because this is it's obviously the nature versus nurture conversation. And again, doing that kind of problem analysis, I always look at, what's the one thing that we can almost understand? What's in those cases and changing behaviours, changing how people think, how people feel, what's your take on metacognition and how that plays a role in like understanding someone's self and then making different conscious decisions? So just metacognition of just awareness of being aware of your own thoughts and your own feelings. Have you come across research? Have you come across
research? No, it's not my sphere of expertise at all. But we'll get a metacognition expert on one of these podcasts. I'd love to. We'll have a conversation with them. I mean, what I do understand and what I've been, one thing I've realised myself personally is that I've been introspective since I was young.
Yes, yeah.
So 8, 9, 10, I was sort of aware, which is why I realised was slightly unusual, but I was aware of my behaviour on other people.
Yes.
And when I'm looking at other teenagers, including some of my own teenagers, I think they're not aware of their behaviour's impact on others. But it's what they call now emotional intelligence. Yeah. And you see emotional intelligence is very different in children. And there are some children who catch it really early.
Yeah.
And we don't know why. I don't know why some children are more emotionally intelligent.
I would guess it's because they have to be. So they have to
But
read body language.
But in the same family,
that's interesting.
Same family, same environment, you'll find a child who's really emotionally intelligent and another that's not. And this is where you're talking about nature and nurture.
Yeah.
I think there's an element of both here.
Yeah,
I think
definitely. It's neither or. Yeah.
I've had 5 children. My wife had something to do with it. But the 5 children that we've raised between us, forget everything else, at 1 year old, completely different personalities.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all completely different parents. At 1 year old, we can remember them distinctly. It won't be completely different to that sibling, and that sibling's different to that one. That was different to that one, and they're all going. Same parents, same house. Slightly different dynamics, obviously, because they're different. Sibling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We made a joke of it once because our boy number 5 almost didn't seem like he spoke for 2 years. And I remember almost thinking, has he got a speech impediment? Because he was so quiet. And then we realised that, again, when you analyse it, he didn't need to speak because he had 4 siblings who answered every question for him.
Yeah.
So literally if you said, are you hungry? He didn't say anything.
Really?
Sibling number 4 would say, yes.
Yeah.
And sibling number 3 would say, no, he's not.
Yeah.
And yes, he is, and no, he's not. And it was almost like, he had this cacophony of noise around him all the time, which actually meant that, interestingly, he sat there and just listened most of the time.
So he became quite introspective and emotional.
Yeah,
Was he more emotional?
No, he's not. He's not.
Really?
No,
That's
and he's
interesting.
not. And he's not. And so it is. You can't predict which direction. I have no idea. We'll have to get a child psychologist to explain that maybe. But I think nature and nurture isn't in your argument. There's an element of both.
Yeah.
I think people are born with a certain nature, probably, and that may be genetics, primordial influences of epigenetics, as well as the slightly different behaviours in the womb.
Yes.
Of mum, dad, what they ate, what food they're exposed. I don't know. Pollution changes each year, whatever it might be. Sunnier year, colder year. We don't know. We just don't know. But what is it that changed the epigenetic profile of that individual child? That when they're born and then within a year they've got a distinct personality from their previous sibling and their next sibling. And it's really, really interesting. And I think so there's definitely an element of nature that we don't know and don't control, but there's an element of nurture which we do have some influence on. And that's where we can really change it. But I mean, ultimately, I think the key message I want everyone to take away is you can control your behaviour.
Yeah. Awareness.
And that influences other people's behaviour. Yeah. And having that absolute awareness that you can actually change your behaviours do impact both positively and negatively on others around you.
Massively. And
will change the way you frame life and the way other people frame you in life, and can actually end up with leading you to sort of a deep-seated awareness or knowledge of what is holding you back and what you need to push through.
Yeah.
It's as you say, sort of getting back to, I know what's good for me. I don't always do it though.
No.
I don't always do it. And that's what all of us are guilty of. Well, maybe we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. Doing the right thing most of the time is probably good enough for most of us.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to be a specimen of fitness.
No.
We're not all bodybuilders. We're not all professional athletes. And that's not what we were designed to be. Everyone has a place and a role in life. And being comfortable in your own skin and who you are is also really, really important.
I agree.
You don't have to look a certain way or be a certain shape or to be happy, being happy in your skin and sort of accepting your strengths and some of your weaknesses. That's what makes us all individual. And I think there's an element of that. I think people are far too harsh on themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not saying this from a lofty sort of height looking down. I'm one of those people. I'm usually probably really harsh to myself, and that what that does is that makes you sort of harsh towards other people a little bit. But I want you to do better.
Yeah,
I want you to do better. Please do better, and that can come across in a negative way as well.
And for me, the answer that I've come to, or at the moment anyway, it probably will change, is that it's always your choice. And as long as you learn how to bring that awareness to things, to how you're thinking, how you're feeling, what you're doing, as long as you keep coming back to that awareness, you can make different choices. And science supports that with neuroplasticity, so the brain changing over time and conditioning things. So it's that, as long as I think when you give people that, whether it's nature, whether it's nurture, as long as you give people that, like, it's your choice. And there's lots of, we don't, as we both said multiple times during this, there's so many factors, we don't fully know, But there's so many different tools that I think as long as people have that open mind that it is their choice, they can influence things. They can have that awareness.
So you're empowering people, right?
Yes,
that's what you're doing ultimately you're empowering them. And that's really important, right? Because a lot of people feel disenfranchised and disempowered from the decisions in their own life.
Yes, 100%.
They're a bit like, well, this happens and I have to do this, and that happens and I have to do this.
Yeah.
And I have to eat this, or this is what I like, or when I'm really stressed, I do this. Whether that's smoking a cigarette. Yeah. People. I've never really understood that. As somebody who doesn't smoke. Yeah. But I'm stressed. I need a fag.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Okay. So you need to self-harm.
Yeah.
You need to self-harm because you're stressed. Yeah. What? But then I also understand. Yeah, it's conditioning, right? Yeah. So. There's a reward behavior to it, and we know ultimately we're quite simple creatures, and that's animal studies support. Yeah, with psychological, if you punish or reward animals, they learn really, really, really quickly, and we are similar. That there are those fundamental things that we need, like certainty, uncertainty, comfort, and that's what it is. Giving what is it that triggers.
And it's giving people the tools, because I've got this big thing of, I hate the idea of people being a prisoner to their own mind, to their own, the mind controlling them instead of them making different decisions. So it's my mission with everything that I do to give people the tools to make different decisions. And that's probably come from my own introspection of being so anxious, being so nervous, and then having so many different frame changes where it's kind of like I've gone through an experience and been like, why did I used to think like that? It made no sense. And I didn't have to behave like that. And I was a prisoner because I didn't see past it. And that's one thing that when somebody starts working with me, I always start with that. It's like, you've got problems. And if you keep thinking like you're going to continue. You create the problem, so you will continue. That's so that logically means
to change, right?
You have to think not like you to get the solution. And the way you do that, you expose yourself to education, information, coaching. There's so many different ways of connecting with other people, just having conversations. And it's just understanding you need to go through that process if you want to change. And that's only if people want that help and support to move forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. You've got to get people out of those comfort zones.
Yes.
I've got a nutritional product that I use to give to some of my patients.
Oh, okay.
And we've just started selling it. I've only just put it on the website, actually, because I literally bought it in from the US. It's a US product. And for years, like in trauma surgery, we know that, especially because like 70% of our, say, hip fracture patients are elderly people.
Right.
By the nature of them falling over, standing high and breaking their hip, right? And it's called accelerated recovery, XR.
Oh, I remember you speaking about this. Yes. You were chatting about the leaky gut last time with me, and how they can't intake nutrition, and that's vitamins and minerals, and that's one of the big...
Yeah, so George, I mean, one of the keys, right, to recovery, nutrition, weight loss, all these things in nutrition. And you deal with professional athletes. I also deal with professional athletes at the other end when they're injured and they need recovery. And one of the things that we know from fragility fracture care, so that's older people who break themselves and usually have fragile bones, osteoporosis, that kind of disease process in place. So they've got weak bones. About nearly half of them, when they arrive in hospital, are nutritionally depleted. Right. And even people with high BMIs, you may be obese, but your nutritional profile is poor. That's something that people don't really realize, is that you can have malnutrition, because mal literally means bad.
Yeah.
But you can have bad nutrition and yet be overweight. Because actually your vitamin D and your B12 and your whatever, all the healthy things that you actually need, you're not getting them. And that's the issue with ultra high processed foods, poor nutritional content of food, tasty foods, like whatever it might be, noodles or whatever that you pull out of a packet and cook. I mean, there's almost no nutritional content in any of that stuff, but it's tasty. There's a lot of salt and MSG and all those things that make you want more of it. One of the things I was interested in is when I started to look at cellular regeneration and optimal improvement. There's been studies in the fragility elderly population showing that if you can actually improve their nutritional profile, the operation that they need to fix their fracture, they ride that operation far more smoothly. They don't have such a bumpy road in the operating theatre during that really stressful phase where you're cutting them open, lining bones up, making they're getting blood loss. So in this really high, what we call catabolic phase, where their energy requirements are really, really high because they need to heal and recover, and they're going to be really catabolic, certainly well above normal. And so if you like, if this is where you normally are every single day, when you break your bone and are then trying to heal, your actual nutritional requirements suddenly jump up here.
Yeah.
But we're now giving you drugs and you're in pain, and you're in an alien environment like a hospital where you haven't got your food, your comfort food, your normal triggers for eating, drinking, etc. And so what you actually find is they end up down here.
Yeah.
They end up down here. So while you're in the recovery phase, when you need to be up here, you end up down here because you just can't eat enough.
Yeah.
You don't have appetite, you're on drugs, you're in pain. And so you end up down here. And that actually impedes your recovery now. So if your body's nutritional requirement is here, and you're down here, what's it getting energy from? And the biggest source of energy in your body tends to be an element of fat.
Yeah.
So you'll lose a little bit of fat maybe, but actually where are all your rich nutrients? That's in your muscle.
Yeah.
Right, so skeletal muscle scavenging is what your body tends to do. So your muscles start to shrink as it starts to steal nutrients from your muscle. So your muscle creates that catabolic gap that you have.
Yeah.
Is often made up by skeletal muscle. It's why muscle wastes. And when we see chaps arrive, huge muscle gym goers, military personnel, whatever they are, really strong men arriving into hospital, leaving 2 months later, half the size. Most of their muscle is gone. And they literally, they're stones lighter.
Yeah.
Right, from that huge catabolic hit they've had from a big trauma. And you see that. And so we've done a lot of research into how do you retain that?
Yeah.
Okay, because can you protect them from losing all that muscle? Because the journey they now have to travel to get back to their normal level of strength is much bigger. And the bigger that gap becomes, there's a less likelihood they're ever going to get back there. But also what they lose, it takes them so much longer to recover.
Yeah, so it compounds again.
It compounds a problem, exactly.
Yeah.
So can you actually can you fill that gap? And I was looking for a product. So we put patients on supplements when we want their stem cells optimal. So if you inject somebody's knee or you inject somebody's shoulder and they can't then go to the gym for 2 weeks, 3 weeks while they're recovering, or they've got a sports injury, and you inject them to try and get them to recover quicker, but at the same time they can't train, what happens to them, right? So at pro athlete level, you usually can't keep them away from training because they're going to lose too much. And it'll take far too long to recover, especially if you have a fight in 3 months or fight in 6 months, or, the Olympic. I had a patient, Olympics was in 7 months.
Oh, really?
And they're like, I need to get to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I need you to fix this. And I was like, okay.
The shoulder injury?
6-7 months before Olympics, it was actually a hamstring tendon.
Was it?
Hamstring tendon. And I was like, at the level you compete at the Olympics, right? I was trying to be realistic and say that, you're not going to be peak. You're not going to be peak hitting the Olympics. And how can you train? Because you're going to need to train for the Olympics, obviously. It's not a case of, you just be ready for the Olympics. You've got a whole lot of training to do. So are we really going to get there? And so then you talk about marginal gains theory, right?
Yeah.
Every little bit you can do to try and make the response better, the result better. So we do a multimodality treatment. You'll do some, stimulation treatments, something like shockwave, for instance. And then you'll needle, and then you'll use cells, and then you sort of layer your treatments because each one is going to give you a bit of a boost. Yes. And each one will give the other treatment a boost. So we know now, for instance, if you combine PRP with stem cells, the PRP actually will transfer, and it's been shown in electron microscopy, mitochondria. So the battery pack, as the platelets break down, they release mitochondria, which actually get hoovered up by stem cells. So effectively, you supercharge a stem cell. It becomes, it works harder. It has more energy. It will do more. It will do its job better. So the synergy in biology to many things. But if you then add in optimal nutrition to that, if you give them the right amino acids, right weight, right creatine, and you give them the right level of carbs, right type of carb, and the right level that fills that catabolic gap, will then mean that they're not losing muscle or scavenging muscle while they're recovering. So they're more likely to retain their muscle bulk, which should make their rehabilitation that bit easier. But on top of that, it reduces the inflammation in the system. Because if you give them clean carbs rather than sugar-rich carbs, so low glycemic index carbs, they don't have a sugar rush, they don't generate inflammation. but they have enough carbs that during their operative and catabolic phase, they're actually more level. Even during surgery, they're more level. They're not up in this rocky riding theatre where everything's all over the place because they're getting surges and hits everywhere. And again, this is all well studied. Lots of studies, 2,000 patient studies, not small, looking at 2,000 patients and showing their infection rates are lower, their recovery is quicker, their length of stay in hospital is lower. So they're getting better by optimizing their nutrition. So one of the things I eventually then found was I looked at this product called XR, which is NSF approved, and it has this interesting sort of mix you can see there. It's got these leucine, HMB, amino acid complexes, and they're all scientifically studied, made by a doctor who does sports medicine and sports surgery. So he sort of looked at all of the evidence. He got all the research papers on nutrition around surgery and recovery and looked at all the evidence behind each of those individual ingredients, looked at the optimal dosages and managed to source them at a really high quality, put them all into one box. And so created this profile where, it supports your recovery, reduces your muscle mass, retains muscle, and reduce your risk of infection if you post-surgery. So we actually created it as a recovery supplement from surgery. But I've now noticed that certainly some of the pro athletes that we've given this to, they're like, well, this is like an amazing post-workout type.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to ask. Is this worth taking?
They're using it for post-workout now. So
that's literally where my brain went.
Yeah, they used it after their recovery from surgery. And we put it on, they take it twice a day for, say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks post-surgery. Because as I said, that catabolic phase is 2 to 3 weeks. And so it supports them to that surgical recovery or that injury recovery phase. But then after that, they got so used to it. And it seemed to work really well. I've got patients who've, really said to me they've noticed a difference, especially as all these pro athletes. It's not their first rodeo.
Yeah.
They've been injured 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, right? So they've been through that journey. It's not their first time. They've been through it 5, 6 times, and supported by this, they felt the recovery was quicker.
Yeah.
And when people who notice 2-3% performance drops in performance, they're the ones who notice those kind of things. Right?
They're massively significant at the top level, aren't they?
Yeah, at the top level, they notice these kind of things. Whereas, if I gave that to me as a weekend warrior who plays a bit of football or tennis with the kids, I probably wouldn't notice. I may not notice. But I know there's benefit in it anyway. So if I was having an operation, it's a no-brainer, I would use it. I just wanted to know what your thought is on nutrition and whether you do anything as part of, the sort of complex amino acids, creatines, how you balance nutrition for your patients when you're not patients. I'm called my patients. You don't deal with patients most of the time, but your clients. How do you sort of talk to them and optimize nutrition for them?
Very interesting field where there's so many people telling you need this diet, you need that diet, this is the best way of eating, this is the best way of doing things. I give the clients, so as I said, I work with business leaders. They're extremely, extremely busy and they struggle massively with nutrition. So rather than giving them a set way of doing things, I give them a framework and then I work with them to improve things. And the framework's really simple. I give them the education on things about general nutrition, but the questions are, how can we make your food healthier? How can we make it still enjoyable? So it's still part of like what you enjoy. How can we make it convenient? And how can we make it lower in processed foods? And what I say to people is we're not looking to answer that once. That's a constant ongoing process. So if you go on holiday, we're back to that process. And from my experience, that gives people better tools to improve their nutrition. Don't get me wrong, they have to have the education with it as well, but that gives them the tools to constantly make better choices as opposed to it just being, I'm going to go on this diet and that's me done. Out of the ingredients on there, I'd say that the one that I focus on the most, especially because of the emerging research as well, is creatine. So there's even emerging research coming out now with creatine about how it not only improves just muscular function, but cognitive function as well. And that's slowly coming out. So that's a no-brainer. If somebody asks me what to supplement, that's one of the first ones I go to. Now, with my clients, what I also do, the needs analysis, I've worked with business leaders in the past and I've given them everything like this, and for some people, I can generally say it just over, whoa, and then they get into this all or nothing frame of thinking of if I'm not doing it perfectly, it's just not good at all. Which is why I now have this more of a kind of movable approach. And people, from my experience working with people, they seem to respond to it so much better.
Okay,
you're definitely right in terms of if we can make it like this is convenient.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
I mentioned to you my psychology is, I do it for people.
Yes, yeah.
And what I used to do is I used to go and get 6-7 supplements.
Yeah.
And then say to them, take those 3 for 2 weeks, and then take these, and then and they're taking then 6-7 different things. And you say that one, it gets a bit confusing. Secondly, it's difficult to sustain.
Yes.
I know myself because I was on 6 at one point, and then I was like chopping, changing, and I went down to 2 or 3, and then eventually, I mean, currently I just take 2 things.
Yeah.
I just take 2 things. I take glutathione.
Yeah.
And I take NAD.
That's interesting.
NAD plus, and that sort of optimizes my cellular health. And those are the things I take most days.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I supplement with D3, intermittently though. Intermittently with D3 and intermittently with B12. I do a few things, but I don't stick to, as you say, a fixed regime that I must do this.
Yeah.
I just go, I'm
overwhelms and people tend to just
oh,
I don't want to do it.
Absolutely. And I think, but because I'm a do to you kind of person, as I'm an interventional clinician, I just think to myself, well, if you're going to go through this process, if you want the optimal results, this is done for you. Yeah. And that's what I quite liked, Dr. Jazeri, who invented this, sort of looked through this and thought, in the same way, most surgeons are, our mentality is that we do things to people.
Yeah.
That's why we're the kind of doctor who cuts you and uses power tools and, we do things to people to fix them. And so I suppose our approach very much is let's make this optimal. And so what he's done is he's looked at all of the research, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of research papers, synthesized the best evidence, created a desire list of all the perfect things he'd want for his patients in nutrition, then went and gone to an engineering company and said, can you make this for me?
That's interesting.
And then they've come back and said, well, you've got to get this from... And the ingredients are sourced from all over the world. You get this from Japan, you get that from China, you get that from Korea, you get that from America, you get that from... And so they've gone to the very best ingredient providers, so everything in it is really pure. And that's where the NSF certification, every batch in this is tested for dose and purity.
And how long did it last?
Because the National Sports Federation in the US means that this is like anti-doping approved and the purity approved. And you literally, every time you produce a pallet or a batch of this, you have to send off another test, which they charge a lot of money for to give you that NSF certification, because they absolutely test the purity of the product as well. Yeah. So there's no contaminants. There's not if you said 20 milligrams of creatine, there's 20 milligrams of creatine. Yeah. There's not 18 or 19. That's good. There's not even 21, it's 20. So it has to be really precise. Yeah. But on top of that, every ingredient has to be, they test it for purity. So it has to be 98, 99, 100% pure. Otherwise, it doesn't meet that NSF certification. Yeah. They won't give it to you. And so that gives you that reassurance. They've gone through the due diligence. Yes. It's sort of medical grade nutrition. Yes. Without, but easily available. And so, to me, it's been a bit of a no-brainer. And there's no product like it that I'm aware of, which is why we ship it in from the US and we use it for our patients. So I think it's key. I think it's key that we are what you eat. Yes. And certainly in a recovery phase, when you're most vulnerable, you need your nutrition to be optimized. Yes. And that's where we're missing the trick all the time. It's a bit of a no-brainer that we should have a gap in that area. But people can't. I know when I was recovering from surgery, you're lying in bed and people are trying to overfeed you. You don't want it's getting 2 steaks into you. When you're laid in bed on drugs and on painkillers and whatever else it might be that you're taking, and you're thinking, I'm not even doing anything. You don't even feel hungry. And someone's saying to you, can you take 200% of your normal nutrition? And you think, well, no.
I'll take 100%.
I can't even get to what I want to normally eat. I eat less. And most people see it as an opportunity to lose weight. I shed weight in that recovery, and you think, well, actually, you most of the time you're losing muscle mass. Yeah, because that's what your body's scavenging, because it needs those minerals, it needs that nutrition to heal you. Yes, so it doesn't need waste products, it doesn't need fat. Yeah, it's not burning calories, it's burning muscle. Yeah, because that's what it needs. It needs nutrients to heal you. It doesn't need fat to heal you. And so that's where it scavenges. It goes to the source it's going to get the nutrients from, which is your muscle. Yeah. So I think it's an important product. I just wanted to know your view on nutrition.
Supplementation. Yeah, Mum. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I think, as you said, it's got to be convenient as well, which is why most people struggle, because the optimal by science is not always the best approach for
and it will evolve, right? I mean, it says surgeon formulated, and I know he's an active researcher in this space. So, there'll be a version 1.1 and a 1.2 and a 1.3, because as science grows and we realise actually maybe the creatine dose should be 5 milligrams higher.
Yeah.
It'll adjust accordingly. This is currently set at our current level of evidence.
Yes.
Whatever the best of what we know now.
Yeah, that makes
sense. In 2025, this meets that requirement. In 2030, that might be different.
Yes.
It's interesting space. So George, thank you very much for coming in.
It's been a pleasure.
And
really enjoyed it.
Really enjoy the conversation. We'll have more of them.
Definitely.
We will have more of them.